Good evening. Welcome to class, online class for CAPF AC Paper 2. Today again we are trying to solve another comprehension which we have taken from one of the university courses. Hope you will like it. First of all, we would like to learn the rules which we had already conveyed to you. And that slide is before you. So first of all, we'll read all those rules for solving the comprehension. So this is the slide in front of you. These are the rules I would like to read. Rules for solving the comprehension. So read the passage of comprehension carefully at your natural speed. Reread the passage of comprehension slowly. Mark difficult words, find their meanings. Read all questions carefully. Find out likely answers from the passage. Reply as far as possible in your own sentences. And even if you have failed to comprehend the passage fully, during exam time, it is for the exam time, write answers from the passage. Do not leave it unanswered. What I mean to say that lastly, you have to answer the passage. After reading the passage, you must answer all the questions carefully, because even if you do not comprehend and you are able to rewrite the answers from the passage itself, that will fetch you mark. Minimum out of 10, you will be getting 4 or 5. So therefore, do not leave it at all. This is my word of advice to you. Now coming to the passage. Again, we will go to the passage and read it carefully. Coming to the passage, this passage we have selected from one of the comprehension, English reading comprehension set 1. So the passage in front of you. So this is the passage. So economic transformation of India is one of the greatest business stories of our time. As stifling government regulations have been lifted, entrepreneurship has flourished, and the country has become a high-powered center for information technology and pharmaceuticals. Indian companies like Infosys and Wipro are powerful global players, while Western firms like GE and IBM now have major research facilities in India employing thousands. India's seemingly endless flow of young, motivated engineers, scientists, and managers offering developed world skills at developing world wages is held to be putting American jobs at risk. And the country is frequently heralded as the next economic superpower. So, what is happening from this passage? We can guess that the leading companies which are dealing with the computers, artificial intelligence, etc., information technology, that is Infosys, Wipro, and the Western firms like GE and IBM have got the major research facilities and companies in India, and they are employing large number of workforce, which is skilled graduate engineers, and they are also employing managers. And now this phenomena has led to the American jobs at risk. India is bound to become next economic superpower. But India has run into a surprising hitch on its way to superpower status. It is its inexhaustible able supply of worker is becoming exhausted. So earlier we had supply of manpower which was not to be exhausted, which was continuous, but now it is becoming exhausted. Means now we are getting less manpower. Although India is one of the youngest workforce on the planet, the head of Infosys that recently that there was an acute shortage of skilled manpower. Infosys head Murthy Narayan recently said that we have acute shortage of skilled manpower. And a study by Harvard Associate projects that this year salaries for skilled worker will rise 14.5%, a surge sign that demand for skilled labor is outstripping the supply. So what is happening for the skilled labor who are well versed with the artificial intelligence, coding programs, and computer-based knowledge, their salaries are going to rise by 14.5%, which means that there is shortage of labor. How is this possible in a country that every year produces 2.5 million college graduates and 400,000 engineers? Start with the fact that just 10% of the Indians get any kind of post-secondary education, compared with some 50% who do in the US. So this fact should be remembered that in US, post-secondary education is more in comparison to our country. Moreover, of that 10%, the vast majority of one of India's 17,000 colleges, many of which are closer to community college than to four-year institutions, in India does have more than 300 universities, but a recent survey by the London Times Higher Education Supplement put only two of them among the top 100 in the world. So our colleges are in comparison, most of our colleges are in comparison to the community colleges. Community colleges are the colleges which are run by the government in United States. So London Times Higher Education has said that only two universities of Indian standards, India's, were equivalent to the world standard. A current study led by Vivek Wadhwa of Duke University has found that if you define engineer by US standard, India produces just 170,000 engineers a year, not 400,000. Infosys that 1.3 million applicants for jobs last year, it found that only 2% acceptable. So last year 1.3 million, yeah, 13 lakh applications were there before the Infosys, and only 2% of them could qualify for the job of computers. There was a time when many economists believed that post-secondary education didn't have much impact on economic growth. The really important education gains, they thought, came from giving rudimentary skills to a large number of people, which India still needs to do. At least 30% of the population is illiterate. They believed that in economic terms, society got a very low rate of return on its investment in higher education. But lately, the assumption has been overturned, and the social rate of return on investment in university education in India has been circulated at an impressive 9 or 10%. In other words, every dollar India puts into higher education creates value for economy as a whole. Means whatever the money India is putting in the higher education, we are getting return from the rising level of the economy. Yet India spends roughly 3.5% of its GDP on education, significantly below the percentage spent by the US, even though India's population is much younger and spending on education should be proportionately higher. So according to study, we are spending 3.5% of the GDP on education, which America is spending more money on education. India's population is much younger, more in number, but spending on education is still very low in comparison to America, and we should spend more money. The irony of the current situation is that India was once considered to be over educated. In the 70s, as its economy language, it seemed to be a country with too many engineers and PhD working as clerks in the government offices. In the period of decade of 70, it was thought that India have engineers and PhDs, but they were working in the government offices. Once the Indian business climate loosened up, through that meant companies could tap a backlog of 100,000 of eager, skilled at their disposal. Unfortunately, the education system did not adjust to the new realities. Between 85 and 1997, number of teachers in India actually fell, while percent of students enrolled in high school or college rose more slowly than it did in the rest of the world. Even as the need for skilled workers were increasing, India was devoting relatively fewer resources to producing them. So this is the state of affair which was happening in our country in between 1985 and 1997, when the number of teachers in India was actually falling, means getting less, and percentage of students enrolled in high school or colleges was slowly rising in comparison to the rest of the world. Since the Second World War, the countries that have made successful leaps from developing to developed status have all poured money, public and private, into education. South Korea now spends a higher percentage of its national income on education than nearly any other country in the world. Taiwan had a system of universal primary education before its phase of hypergrowth began. And more recently, Ireland's economic boom was spurred in part by an opening up and expansion of primary and secondary schools and increased funding by universities. So South Korea and Taiwan had their better system of primary education, and they have reaped the dividends from the education by skilled workers. Education will be all the more important for India's well-being. The earlier generation of the so-called Asian tigers depended heavily on the manufacturing, but India's focus on services and technology will require a more skilled and educated workforce. India has taken tentative steps to remedy its skill famine. India has taken steps to overcome the deficiency of the skilled manpower. The current government has made noises about doubling spending on education, and a host of new challenges and universities have sprung up since the mid 90s. But India's impressive economic performance has made the problem seem less urgent than it actually is and allowed the government to defer difficult choices. In a country where more than 300 million people live on $1 a day, producing college graduates can seem like a low priority. So this is one of the reality that we have 300 million people. That is almost 3 crore people who live on $1 a day. Dollar is equivalent to 87 rupees. And so average earning of these 300 million people is 100 rupees per day. So where such kind of stark realities are there, it is difficult to produce college graduates, which will be a low priority for the government. Ultimately, the Indian government has to pull off a very tough trick, making serious changes at a time when things seems to be going very well. It needs, in other words, a clear sense of everything that can still go wrong. The paradox of the Indian economy today is that the more certain its glowing future seems to be, the less likely that future becomes. So this is, in general, we have gone through the paragraph. You should reread it again and then go to the questions. So now read it in your own mind, all these paragraphs, the passage completely. Try to comprehend the meaning of the difficult words, find out their meanings in the dictionary or in the Google, and then we'll be coming to the questions. So what are the questions? Let us know the questions. First question is how American jobs are at risk. We had explained in the paragraph. Number two, why our universities are poor in comparison to the world standard of education. Number three, why Infosys could get only 2% of skilled graduates, whereas almost 1.3 million graduates had applied for jobs in the Infosys. How much India spends on education? Why Taiwan and South Korea are ahead of us? According to the passage, what is the paradox of Indian economy? Paradox means riddle, means it is difficult to comprehend that why things are not happening as accepted, as expected. So I repeat the questions again. How American jobs are at risk? First question. Why our universities are poor in comparison to world standard of education? World standard of education. Why Infosys could get only 2% of skilled graduates? How much India spends on education? Why Taiwan and South Korea are ahead of us? According to passage, what is the paradox of Indian economy? These are the 5 questions. You have to write answers in your own words. Try to answer in a precise manner in 2-3 lines, covering the gist of the uh, answer, keeping in mind the question. The irrelevant portion should not be written in the answer because it will not fetch you the marks. So this is how we will solve the comprehension. So I hope there are no doubts, and this is also an exercise for you. So do it at your own time, send your answers, which will be checked and then redirected to you for correction and improvement in the comprehension. We hope that you would like this video. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.